Well, today is the last day of Women's Month, observed every year in March. The celebration of Women's History Month highlights the achievements of women worldwide and also focuses on areas that need improvement. A group of law students from Africa recently shared their thoughts on the state of human rights of women in their countries. Professional students from Georgetown Law's Leadership and Advocacy for Women in Africa program attracted a large audience on Capitol Hill recently. The women, all lawyers, 2 from Ethiopia, 2 from Uganda, Cameroon and Kenya, say they want to use their legal knowledge to push for the enforcement of laws that will do away with practices that infringe on women's rights, such as child marriage, trafficking, rape and other offences. Gladys Mbuya of Cameroon explains one obstacle to improving women's rights in her country.
There's a report out of 180 parliamentarians in Cameroon, only 20 are women. Out of 137 mayors, only 10 are women. Out of 34 ministers, only 4 are women.
While laws that guard against practices such as rape and trafficking exist, many are not fully implemented. Rachel Muthonga of Kenya commends her country's Sexual Offences Act, but she says slow judicial processes, few police centres and bungled procedures make it ineffective. She says many women, including those raped during Kenya's 2007 post-election violence, fail to get justice as a result.
Having a functioning criminal justice system is also a line of defense for women. The fact that these perpetrators know that there are consequences for their actions. But separate and apart from that is that women need to continue to make this an issue.
Observers say cultural and religious practices such as genital cutting and polygamy are hard to fight with the law alone. Magda Tesema of Ethiopia says still high at 74%, genital cutting is declining, but urges the government to do more than just criminalize the offense.
That shouldn't happen. They should move to initiatives that work on modifying culture and tradition. That's not particularly easy, and that's not particularly cheap as well.
Child marriage is also hard to stop, says Mbuya Free, because often parents believe that's the only way their girl children can have a future.
I tell them, I say, you too, your daughter can become a lawyer tomorrow. Don't give them out to marriage. I even got married late. So I tell them, I went to school and I still got married. Some of them believe that if you send the child to school, she will never get married.
Climate change is another area affecting women's rights, says Zamu Kaboneke of Uganda. She says flooding and drought can lead to displacement and income loss for women who depend on farming.
I'm proposing that the developed countries do whatever they can, such as funding, to help Uganda to look at climate change with urgency.
Many agree much has changed for women in Africa overall, but these lawyers stress ending poverty and increasing access to education as key to achieving women's equality. Ethiopia's Selamawit Tesfaye says poverty is fueling the migration of Ethiopian women to the Middle East in search of work as domestic workers.
If women have opportunities locally, I think there will not be any need to migrate to other countries in search of other work.
Sarah Nambasa of Uganda says often the laws fail because they are hard to interpret, especially for many women, most of whom are illiterate.
There's a need to disseminate these laws or to put them in local languages so that the people can understand their rights and they can go to court and claim for those enforcement of those rights.
Now, we are joined by Gladys Mbuya Free, one of the members of Georgetown Law Leadership and Advocacy for Women in Africa program. It's such a pleasure to have you here in the studio, Gladys.
Thanks for having me.
Now, some would say the figures you painted earlier in the story are staggering. The lack of women representation in top government officials. Why is that so small?
Yeah, I think, as I said, child marriage is a contributory factor because, you know, when these girls go out and get married too early, they don't have the opportunity to go to school, and that inhibits their ability to take part in the political life of their country. So that's why I'm attacking child marriage because, you know, if you see a country where out of 180 parliamentarians, only 20 are women, out of 337, there's a 2007 report which testifies to that. Out of 373 mayors, only 10 are women. And out of 23 ministers, only 4 are women.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of male-dominated areas over there, and this is a very traditional issue, you could say. How do you now introduce the law aspect to try and combat this traditionally practiced thing?
Yeah, I think many international human rights conventions, they actually guarantee equality between men and women when it comes to marriage. And Cameroon is a state party to almost all of these conventions and has ratified them without reservations. Those conventions, they obligate Cameroon as a state party to implement laws guaranteeing equality between men and women, and even to enact laws where none exist, and you know, to implement the promotional human rights norms cited in those conventions. But you know, Cameroon is yet to translate its obligations into action. That's what I'm saying, because you know, we still have the Civil Status Registration Ordinance, which is the law governing marriage in Cameroon, that puts marriage age for women at 16 and you know, 19 for boys, because it says a girl who is 15 years cannot get married. It means if you are 15 plus, you are free to get married. If a boy is 18 years, you cannot get married. It means if you are 18 plus, you can get married. And this runs counter all the international conventions, because Cameroon is a state party to the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa, and that one specifically puts marriage age for women at 18 years old.
But now, I don't mean to cut in, but obviously a lot of countries are signatories to a lot of these statutes that you're talking about. The question is implementing them, making sure that they abide by them. You as a lawyer now and taking this program, how do you bring your expertise now to make sure that this happens?
Yeah, I think advocacy is the word, because, you know, like this program in which I'm involved, Leadership and Advocacy for Women in Africa, I believe it's going to take my advocacy to a new level, because I think both international and domestic actors are crucial to the success of this campaign. We really need to use international frameworks to continuously exert pressure on Cameroon to actually proscribe child marriage by legislation, because I know it is easier to assert a right which is legally defined than to claim one where none exists. So we'll use the international framework and continue to advocate for Cameroon to proscribe this child marriage by legislation, because it's hard to start claiming, no, don't send this child out to marriage at 15 years old, when the law is there saying that marriage age is 16 for girls. So
I have to stop you there, but also I know it's a question of also changing the mindset of a lot of people. So anyway, good luck with everything you're doing. That's our thanks so much to Gladys Mbuya, one of the LAWA fellows who's here in Washington.